The year is 2025. Europe, once a beacon of unity and progress, is again a theatre of war. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine, simmering for years, has erupted into a full-blown crisis. Millions have been displaced, cities lie in ruins, and the spectre of nuclear escalation hangs heavy in the air. Amidst this grim backdrop, a glimmer of hope emerged. The United States, seeking to end the bloodshed, proposed a ceasefire agreement between the warring nations. This proposal, endorsed by many Western powers, sought to create a window for dialogue and diplomacy. The hope was that a pause in the fighting could provide a much-needed reprieve for the beleaguered Ukrainian people and pave the way for a negotiated settlement. However, the path to peace is rarely straightforward. The US-led ceasefire proposal called for a complete cessation of hostilities for an initial period of 30 days. This period, it was hoped, would allow for humanitarian aid to reach those in desperate need and for talks to begin between Russian and Ukrainian representatives. The proposal was clear. All military operations, including airstrikes, shelling and troop movements, were to cease immediately. The proposal also included provisions for international monitoring to ensure compliance from both sides. The hope was that this neutral oversight would help build trust and prevent a relapse into violence. The stakes were incredibly high, and the international community watched with bated breath as Russia considered its response. Vladimir Putin, the enigmatic and often unpredictable leader of Russia, responded to the ceasefire proposal with a mix of caution and skepticism. While not outright rejecting the offer, he laid out a series of conditions that would have to be met before Russia could agree to a cessation of hostilities. Putin's conditions, rooted in the Kremlin's narrative of the conflict, centered around security concerns and historical grievances. He demanded guarantees that Ukraine would never join NATO, viewing the Western military alliance as an existential threat to Russia's security. Additionally, Putin insisted on recognition of Russia's annexation of Crimea, a Ukrainian territory seized by Russia in 2014. These demands, seen as non-starters by many in the West, underscored the deep mistrust and fundamental differences in perspective that fueled the conflict. The Kremlin, wary of Western intentions, viewed the ceasefire proposal with suspicion. Russian officials, including Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, publicly questioned the timing and motivation behind the US-led initiative. They argued that the proposed 30-day pause in fighting would only serve to give Ukrainian forces time to regroup, rearm, and prepare for a renewed offensive. These concerns, echoed by Russian state-controlled media, reflected a deep-seated belief that the West was using the conflict to weaken Russia and undermine its geopolitical standing. The Kremlin saw the ceasefire proposal not as a genuine attempt to end the suffering, but as a cynical ploy to buy time and gain a military advantage. Section 5. The spectre of Western intervention. Further fueling Russia's suspicions was the issue of Western military aid to Ukraine. Since the start of the conflict, the United States and its NATO allies had provided Ukraine with billions of dollars worth of weapons, intelligence and training. This support, while crucial in enabling Ukraine to resist the Russian invasion, also heightened tensions with Moscow. Putin and his inner circle saw the West's provision of advanced weaponry to Ukraine as a direct threat to Russian security. They argued that the influx of Western arms was prolonging the conflict and increasing the risk of a wider war between Russia and NATO. This narrative, widely disseminated by Russian propaganda outlets, aimed to rally domestic support for the war effort and paint the West as the aggressor. Section 6. Ukraine's perspective. For Ukraine, the US-led ceasefire proposal represented a glimmer of hope in the midst of a desperate struggle for survival. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, facing immense pressure from a relentless Russian onslaught, welcomed the initiative and expressed his country's willingness to engage in good-faith negotiations. However, Zelensky also made it clear that Ukraine would not accept any peace agreement that compromised its sovereignty or territorial integrity. He insisted that any ceasefire must be accompanied by a complete withdrawal of Russian forces from Ukrainian territory, including Crimea and the Donbas region. Section 7. The quest for lasting peace. The US-led ceasefire proposal while ultimately unsuccessful in bringing about an immediate end to the fighting, did succeed in opening a channel for diplomatic engagement between Russia and Ukraine. In the months that followed, several rounds of talks were held, mediated by international partners such as Turkey and France. These talks, though fraught with tension and mistrust, provided a forum for both sides to articulate their grievances, explore potential areas of compromise, and work towards a negotiated settlement. While a lasting peace agreement remained elusive, the very fact that dialogue was ongoing offered a glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak and uncertain landscape. Section 8. Geopolitical implications. The conflict in Ukraine sent shockwaves throughout the international system, shattering long-held assumptions about European security and ushering in a new era of geopolitical rivalry. The war had profound implications for the global balance of power, exacerbating existing tensions between Russia and the West and leading to a realignment of alliances. The conflict also had far-reaching economic consequences, disrupting global supply chains, driving up energy prices, and contributing to rising inflation worldwide. The war's impact was felt most acutely in Europe, which faced an unprecedented energy crisis as a result of its reliance on Russian gas. Section 9. The uncertain path ahead. As the conflict in Ukraine entered its third year, the path to peace remained fraught with obstacles. Deep-seated mistrust, conflicting narratives, and the ever-present risk of escalation continued to plague any efforts at finding a lasting solution. Despite these challenges, the international community's commitment to diplomacy and dialogue remained unwavering. The quest for peace in Ukraine was not just about ending the bloodshed and suffering in that war-torn country. It was about upholding the principles of international law, respecting the sovereignty of nations, and preventing future conflicts from erupting. The world watched, hoped and prayed for a peaceful resolution to this devastating conflict, knowing that the stakes could not be higher.